but we were actually asked to speak as well. You had a speech, I had a speech. How do you think yours would?
How do you think people responded to ArcPlatforms at this conference? A graphics calculator to maths is what generative AI is to English. All right, welcome back to the Business of Teaching podcast. If you're new here, this is where we talk about what it takes to run a teaching business in today's world. Now, as always, Riley, would you be able to give an update on ArcPlatforms this week?
Yeah, so this week, just a small thing. It was an integration into a new self-serve subscription for ArcPlatforms and ArcPlatforms chat product for people to come and sign themselves up and be on their way.
So thanks for the update, Riley. Yeah, let's jump into today's episode then. Do you want to announce the topic?
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about the ATA Sydney conference for the tutoring industry that we were, a part of.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just going to ask you some questions and, we'll have a conversation from there.
Fantastic. Well, let's go.
Yeah, so what was the purpose of the conference?
Yeah, so basically the conference we went to was run by the ATA, or the Australian Tutoring Association. So this is an association that's been around for about 20 years now, give or take. It's got over 500 members all around Australia. And these members include companies, they include individuals, and basically they're just everyone who's like part and parcel of that teaching or tutoring industry. And they run a conference. I think it hasn't been run for a while now because of the pandemic, but I believe moving forward it's going to be once every year. And it's a conference where all the people who are relevant to the tutoring space come and meet and talk to each other. Last year in 2024 in December, it was held in Sydney, and we went there. We were part of that, part of that conference, and hopefully a pivotal part of that conference. Yeah.
So thanks for that. So who was actually there apart from us?
Yeah, so the conference basically had pretty much everyone who's relevant to the tutoring space. So you've got companies that are tutoring businesses, large and small. We're talking companies that are like very, very small with maybe a few dozen students. And then you have companies with tens of thousands of students. And even, I think there was a publicly listed company there as well, right? And you've got people who are at different levels of experience, right? People who want to start tutoring businesses, people who have already been in the industry for decades, right? And you've also got people not even doing tutoring, people running music businesses as well. Like, it's just really broad, as well as you've got the suppliers, sort of like us, people who are doing compliance, running, legal things here and there, and just giving advice on how to run businesses as well. Like coaches, I believe, were there as well, like business coaches. Yeah, so just a very wide variety of people, and I think it is very good. It just allows that cross-pollination of, information and content, especially in such a highly concentrated environment. Yeah.
Okay, so we were there and we listened to people's speeches. Like, there was a few speakers lined up and interesting topics. Most people were quite engaging, to be honest. But we were actually asked to speak as well. So, you had a speech, I had a speech, and I just want to know, how do you think yours would?
Yeah, I mean, like, just before I answer that, I'll give some background for everyone as well. Like, we were asked specifically to join by the CEO of the ATA, a really nice fella called Mohan. And basically, how we talked and got to Mohan to get asked, to get invited, is also a story in and of itself. We were asked by Mohan to give a speech, both you and me, at the conference. And look, it was somewhat nerve-wracking. I guess not really, but sort of the first real public speaking activity, excuse my pronunciation there, that I've done in a long time, right? Like probably since I was in high school with that many people. So basically what I was talking about was what we learned on our trip to Europe, more specifically the UK, and then basically sort of passing on that information about our experiences over there to the people at TTA, as well as explaining and showing this new product that we developed, ArcPlatforms Chat. And in terms of like how that went, obviously the initial chat itself, or the initial speech itself, it was quite, it's been a while since I've done something like that, and yeah, it was quite a good experience, at least from my side. I quite liked it, actually. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think like going over there, it was a bit of a validation point, because we had all of these people in the room that would present this idea of, the tutoring industry's communication, like way that they do it is kind of broken, that we identified, and other companies agreed with us, and then these new people that first heard that idea, and we're kind of like presenting the case, presenting how it could be solved potentially, and yeah, that was pretty good to talk to people about that, and then have people, afterwards come up and engage more, or even while we're up there. When I was up on the stage, I got asked, I think, one question from the audience or two, and just had to think on my feet real quick and answer it.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, it would have been a while since you'd experienced that type of social presentation, right?
Yeah.
It's not something we do often, is it?
But what do you think of the conference, like overall, how, being in Australia and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, like I've alluded to, I mean, we've been to other conferences before, more specifically the one in the UK with the TTA.
Tutoring as well.
Yeah. And obviously the TTA is a lot bigger. You've got probably 300-400 people going to that conference throughout the day, whereas the ATA is a lot smaller. So I guess there's a bit of a difference there. But in terms of everyone, I think it is very different. Like the ATA, there was this sort of feeling of it was more intimate because there's less people. So when you're talking to someone and just sharing ideas, it just feels more sociable. It's not really like you're out there to network or anything. It's more just like talking to people who are professionals in the space, and at this point colleagues, right?
Yeah.
And I quite liked it, especially the sharing of our ideas and sort of hearing different people's opinions on the things that we were offering. I think, like listening to what people were saying, it was a pretty good sort of eye-opening experience.
Yeah, so going on to that, what people were saying, what were the most interesting discussions that we heard over there?
Yeah, I mean, at least from my side, there were a few things that I thought were quite interesting, especially the non-tutoring related things, the tutoring adjacent things. So you had people talking about various compliance matters and various things relating to like specific new ideas and new platforms that people were dreaming up of. There was a couple of different presentations there that I won't delve too deep in today, but I thought that would definitely, definitely sort of open my eyes to something new, right? But what about yourself? Do you have anything more specific?
I guess like the theme of 3, I guess 3 out of what, 10? How many speeches were there? 10 or more
15.
Speakers? Yeah, 15.
Probably.
The theme of about 3 of them were about AI and how that's changing the industry in ways. But, that's older news than... that's older news to us, like we've been on it for a few years now. But I guess some of them were not that engaging as the others, but yeah, that's what it is. Every conference has that sort of stack of good things and bad things that you listen to, but anyway.
Yeah, but I think like in general, the trend that you brought up there with like people talking about the rise of AI and how AI is going to impact the education space, or in fact how AI has already impacted the education space. And I think another thing that was really touched upon was like the rise of online learning, and how, maybe 5-10 years ago, learning online would have been somewhat like inconceivable or very rare, maybe only really done by rural or more rural communities. And I think nowadays, even amongst metropolitan areas, especially in Victoria, right, it's a lot more accepted these days. And
For tutoring.
yeah, for tutoring, right? I think that was also a theme. And I think one of the things that did really stand out to me was I think Storm's speech, where he was talking about, how they've started tutoring decades ago, like, even as early as the 80s and earlier. And what he said was, like, these days families are not as single units, so there's more like separated families, so that that sort of changes the dynamic of tutoring as well, because if you have more separated families, then it's more difficult to get the tutoring done on a more consistent basis. And yeah, I thought that was quite interesting, right? Because obviously, as your company develops over the years, there's all these different trends, these macro trends, especially these demographic macro trends that you sort of have to ride the wave of. And it's quite interesting seeing that happen in real life with a company like the one that speaker sort of was talking about. So I really thought that was quite interesting. Yeah.
Right. So I think like something that I could just think of, it came up while you were talking about that.
Yeah.
There was a presentation about online test taking.
Yeah.
Right? And they talked about how these days, like for us when we were in high school, university, the AI tools weren't there yet.
Yeah.
And then literally we finished our university and they were off to the races. But that was just showing, in the current learning management systems, how easy it is for someone to sit there and just complete every test, complete it all with like precision, getting every answer right or whatnot, just because of the AI. So I thought there's got to be different ways that you assess a person, a student, because the tests that we used to have, that we do online, the whole thing could be done by a computer. So how would you tell, that student is actually capable? Which, it leads into other thoughts, like if the whole world is going to be changed and switched up into this, okay, you just have to be able to prompt to get an answer. You don't actually need to be able to produce the answer yourself. Maybe that's how it is in the workplace, and maybe people just don't need to know things anymore or know how to actually do things. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, like, evolutionarily.
Yeah.
This wasn't part of his speech, I'm just thinking about it.
Yeah, and like from my opinion as well, I think especially in a lot of educational institutions these days, there's an element of naivete, especially when it comes to like, oh, I'll give you an assignment to do, don't use AI. And that's what they say. Using AI is against the rules. But I mean, you can't say something like that when there's no way to prove it, right? Like, even if someone wrote something that's fairly certain to be AI, like, you still can't prove beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Well, we'll just say this, because people think you can prove it as AI if you go through is this AI, right?
Yeah.
There are tools that I think that were quickly adopted by schools and graders and whatever, but there's also like two sides to a war, where this side figures out, okay, we can figure out if it was AI, and then this side figures out how we can make it look more human so it doesn't get picked up by this side. And the whole thing is it's like a standoff between both sides, and no one's going to win, and you can't win.
And even if you do, let's say, figure out some magic solution, right, to work out if something's AI or not, you can still just AI something and change a few words.
Well,
right?
In the conference, that guy, what he ended up saying was, you have to be in a room with a desk, with a piece of paper and a pen. That's the only way.
Exactly.
And that is the only way that you can assess someone without AI. Like everything that was done, I guess, online, during the lockdowns and stuff, all that could be spoofed. Yeah. And there's universities that are moving things offline that they did, push into online space in previous years.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just reversing it all because now AI is like...
Yeah, AI is like a thing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, from my side, I personally think schools and institutions are just too slow. They should have been doing this years ago. They should have been doing this when AI came out in 2022, end of 2022?
Yeah.
Right? It's already been, more than 2 years. Like, the
Yeah.
fact that they're still giving out assignments in year 7, right, is honestly, like, I don't understand that, yeah? Because you just got to assume that everyone's using AI. And look, kids are smarter than most teachers these days, right? You know, something new is going to come out, right? And there's no way that you can win the arms race. The only way to win the arms race is to not even play that game. Only do tests from now on. Everything is in test conditions.
Yeah, pen and paper.
Pen and paper. Yeah, fantastic. Well, I guess the last question, like from your perspective, how do you think people responded to ArcPlatforms at this conference?
Well, we got some interest and I think a few sign-ups from it. People, you know, because we are a product that came into the market, you know, we're newer, and we have to be heard about by all these people in the industry, and that only happens over time, right? So these people that never heard of us, then they hear about us. They hear about us come in and talk about this communication, like, gap that tutoring companies currently have not had addressed by any software, by any product. And yeah, I think it was cool to, I guess, give them a new perspective that they'd probably never heard before, and I think it was received well overall.
Yeah, 100%.
What do you think?
I mean, put it this way, right? On the last day, I didn't even hear much of the speeches because I was giving demos out, right? Left, right, and center, right? So, like, you know, I thought a lot of people were very surprised at how complex and how sophisticated our solution was. I think a lot of people...
Not to use, it's not complex to use, but...
Like, in terms of how much was done, if you know what I mean, right? Like, people... I don't think people realize, like, what was all the sort of things that we had thought about and done. You know, they probably thought we'd only done scheduling or only done just billing, whereas we'd done, you know, promotions, we'd done the CRM, we'd done chat. Like, we'd done so many things that I think, yeah, people literally just sort of discounted that, right? And yeah, we've had people even now, like a couple months later, 2-3 months later, reaching out back to us and saying, you know, asking for demos and asking us to sort of provide more insight even in how, like, we ran things and did things as well. So yeah, I mean, you know, I think it was a really good experience going over there, and you know, even going to Sydney as well. It's quite interesting sometimes, right?
Yeah, it was good weather.
Yeah.
Anyway, so to finish off, I'm going to ask the question to you this week. What is one thing that you have learnt?
Yeah, so one of the things that I sort of learnt or got a new perspective on, I think is the right way of saying it, is a graphics calculator to maths is what generative AI is to English, right? So if you think about it, a graphics calculator helps you compute your arithmetic a lot easier, right? Because instead of, you know, working out all the specific, you know, numbers and using your sort of normal pen and paper to work things out, you're more sort of standing behind it all, and you know, like, how everything works from the back end, and you know what things to put into the calculator and what things to work out, and you know everything from a technical perspective, right? But you don't necessarily know everything from, well, you don't have to do all the manual labor, right? Which could take a lot of time. I guess in the instance of generative AI, it sort of does the same thing. Instead of you doing all the nitty-gritty work of writing every single sentence and putting all those, like, you know, nouns, pronouns, you know, all together to come up with a string of words, you're basically directing the overarching idea and sort of just pushing that into reality. Because, look, at the end of the day, if you're an engineer, nobody cares if you can calculate everything by hand. And if you're working in the workplace and formulating a letter or formulating some sort of slide for your boss. Nobody cares if it was done by AI, just as long as the final result is accurate, is well articulated. That's all that really matters at the end of the day, right? So, I think a lot of the times we need to embrace it, right? What we should have is a, potentially moving forwards, similar to what Maths does, where you have a calculator exam and a non-calculator component, right, of your learning. Maybe in English we have an AI component and a non-AI component, right, with pen and paper. Because I think, look, this is how the world is moving, and whether we need to make a decision. Do we try to stem the flow of something that is impossible to stem, right? Do we try to, close Pandora's box? That's impossible. Or do we try to, go with the flow and make sure that, especially in an educational perspective, we can prepare the future generations for 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
I agree with the different tests. But I do have an intuition that people that are good at English without ChatGPT, they're also going to be the best at English with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I honestly think that. I think that people that are bad at English already are going to be bad at GPT also.
Yeah.
But that's only because if you look at what comes out of GPT, there is a bit of a taste that the human can pick up on. That, it's good. It may be grammatically correct, but
is a little bit artificial.
Yeah, it's a bit artificial still at this point in time.
Yeah.
I bet it won't be for that much longer, but that's just the current state of the industry.
Yeah, you can definitely tell, to be honest, when something is written with AI at a certain level. Yeah.
And I suppose a long form, you can really tell. Maybe a little short reply to an email isn't that big of a deal, but if you're doing an English assessment on a child,
Well, fantastic. I guess that concludes the podcast for today, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.